welcome back to Let's Talk Live. Improving your relationship with your spouse is never easy. So how do you approach the idea of getting closer and taking your connection to the next level? Relationship therapist Keith Miller is here with some suggestions to get your relationship rolling again. Good to have you with us today. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks.
I think of Washington as the ultimate two-career town where just about everybody in a couple has a job, a career, something they're doing that is taking up a lot of their time and psychic energy. That often means we don't have time and energy to devote even to our primary relationships.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's a great point because this is a busy town. We all know that. And it's all too easy to start to develop what I call exits in relationships. So, and exits are really things that are natural. It's like you have friends, you have other interests, you might be religious. These are things that drain energy from your relationship. But even having kids are exits. But it's important as a couple to know what those are and be aware that when you're starting to exit the relationship intentionally, and that's something to talk about.
By exit, do you mean a literal divorce or some big step, or you're talking about kind of the death of a thousand cuts that occurs when resentments build up, or you're just not taking time for each other?
Yeah, these are small things, like a partner that's on the computer all night, or never around in the evenings, and you don't have time. It's anything that takes away the time for your connection. That's an exit. So it's not really just leaving the relationship, even though that's often a catastrophic form of exits.
All right. So when one person in a relationship starts to recognize some of the trouble spots, the warning signs, whatever, what kind of steps can they take?
Well, it's important. I put together a list on my website, keithmillercounseling.com. It's a list of things that are simple that you can start to do to take steps toward connecting again. And oftentimes we think of this as a big process that you have to deconstruct your relationship, but it's really not it's not the case. There's some simple things that you can do, like, for example, being aware of how you use criticism. I made a video, an audio clip. It's sort of a tutorial that shows people that we overuse criticism. It's really like when infants are crying. My wife and I have an infant at home, 1.5-year-old, and when she cries, it's her way of getting attention. But it actually sort of inflicts pain in its own way. It inflicts or triggers distress of whoever's around. And as adults, we do that too. We're really often like little children when we blame or criticize our partner. It doesn't help them to know what to do. So it's really important to name, well, here's what I need, to know your needs, and to be able to say them in a way that doesn't criticize your partner or shame them.
Is it fair to say that a lot of times we'll criticize about one thing because we're angry about something completely different, and we just haven't gotten around to figuring out how or whether to deal with that potentially more major issue head on?
Sure, absolutely. It's sort of a passive way of dealing with things, and it never really gives you very good traction. So, of course, oftentimes people are afraid of being too direct, and that's a real concern, because sometimes if you just have your laundry list out, it's not, your partner's not going to respond to it. So it is possible to be middle of the road on this and to say, here's something I'm concerned about, I'd like to change, but here's what I'm going to be doing to create the change myself.
What other tips do you recommend? What other advice?
Well, be a good listener. It's something that I challenge people even to do a small experiment just for a day, to notice what it's like when you help the people around you feel more heard. Usually people will start to appreciate you more, and they'll actually do things for you when you can do that. And it's some simple skills like not interrupting other people. It's something to be aware of. We do it all the time.
It's funny to see relationships evolve sometimes, particularly 10, 20-year relationships where the people have really been together for a long time. When folks are dating, or perhaps after they first gotten married or started living together, they're each other's biggest fan.
Yeah.
Then if some of those resentments build in, or if there are things people need to communicate that they don't get out for whatever reason, then it's like you morph from being the biggest fan to the biggest critic, and that can really be poison.
Yeah, that's often jarring for couples, especially young couples, that are realizing that the romantic phase of the relationship is wearing off. And it's all easy at first because, hey, literally your brain gets high on this. There's a lot of books that have been written about the romantic stage of relationships where it feels so good to be with somebody else who's doing things for you and to feel loved. But when that stops happening and starts to change, one of the partners will say, well, you've stopped, what's wrong with you? And the other person says something like, well, I noticed it first and that's why I stopped.
I think a lot of folks have had that uh-oh moment where it's like, what I just said, my mother might have said, my dad might have said.
Sure.
Few of us want to be our moms or our dads. I mean, unless you were lucky to have that parenting, that mom and dad, that family life at home where it was, you know, the A+ relationship,
Sure,
which
there's some good
sadly
models that we have.
not enough of us had. Then you wake up one day and it's like, oh my God, I'm my mother. Oh my God, I'm saying things I swore I would never do or say.
Well, it's really important to put those assumptions in check, that there may be some resemblance that your partner has to your parent or to your prior experiences where you've been hurt before. But to name that and say, well, maybe it's reminding me a little bit of this, but it's really not the case that this person is doing the exact same thing. To stay present in the moment is very important. And remember, this person you're with is not a copy of you. You know, they're not a facsimile of you. That's something that even though I've studied this and had lots of experience learning the skills, helping other people do this, it's still something that happens for me. It happens for whatever reason around when I'm cooking, for example. My wife hates onions. And for whatever reason, I'm cooking and I get it in my head, well, who could possibly hate onions? And so I'll try to sneak something in, but she can spot an onion.
she's got the onion radar
detector. So, you know, I have to treat her the way she'd want to be treated. That's another one of my top 10.
To what extent do you find yourself dealing with couples or one person in a relationship who's at that crossroads where they're thinking, okay, we've got some issues, and I've got to figure out whether I can, whether together, and you always hope that you have someone that you're in a relationship with who's willing to meet you halfway and discuss
Sure.
issues, etc.
Sure.
But you've got to make a decision sometimes. Can we make improvements and continue going, or is this a relationship that's never going to be what I need it to be?
Right. Well, I coach people all the time about being very patient with the process of change, because it doesn't happen overnight. You didn't get to the place where you're in crisis or feeling disconnected overnight either. So it's a logical step of working backwards. If you were once connected at some point, there's the possibility and the hope that you can be connected again. Absolutely.
Relationship counselor Keith Miller, it's always great having you here. Thanks very much. Good advice.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time today.